Hi, my name is Matt Boxer and welcome to the first module of Tech Mahindra's Staff Financial Education Program, Get Financially Fit. Before we get into Module 1, let me tell you what this program's about. This program's about giving you the knowledge you'll need to improve your financial situation. Improve your situation by managing your money, by managing your superannuation better, by saving tax, by paying down debt faster. At this stage, however, we're only trialing Module 1 and the one-on-one consultations to see if you guys get benefit out of it and if we should roll out the entire program. Now, you may be thinking that I'm going to try and sell you something, or that the program might be too simple to add any value, or that your situation just can't be improved. But I'd ask you to do 4 things at this stage. 1, keep an open mind. If you don't want to get anything out of today, then you probably won't. 2, get involved in the discussions, particularly at future modules where they're more like a workshop rather than this one, which is more like a seminar. 3, fill out the feedback forms that I'm going to email you after today. It's very important that we know how you thought today went. And 4, if we do have other sessions, make sure you tell others that they are of value and that they should come along. Now, before we start, a bit of housekeeping. I know it's going to be very tempting to continue to reply to emails while all this is going on. I think that would be a mistake. If what I'm going to go through involves a step process, and if you miss a step, the rest of the session might not make much sense and you might not get much value out of today. There will be time for Q&A at the end, but I'm happy to take questions as we go. Either just type them out and I'll either respond straight away or I'll answer your questions at the end. And importantly, I have to show you this. This slide basically says what I'm going to go through today is general advice only. I don't know your specific circumstances, your goals, your situation, so I'm not recommending you take a specific action in terms of a financial product or a financial strategy. For that, you really need to see me in a one-on-one situation. So let's get started. Let's start with a bit of audience participation and a question. What does financially fit mean to you? Feel free to type this in the comments. It means different things to different people, but often what springs to mind with most people is concepts around paying down debt or being in control of their assets and liabilities, or having a good asset base, or having good investments, or being able to budget, not spending everything you earn, having some money to save. It can mean a variety of things. And we're going to go through a lot of those different concepts on how you might be able to achieve all those different things, because the outcome you're looking for could be different for different people. That being said, all those outcomes have something in common. They all require a level of financial awareness and knowledge. Back about 10 years ago, the government actually did some research on this topic, and they found that somebody earning $36,000 a year can be almost $800,000 better off over their working life just by understanding money better. That's massive. That's a retirement income stream just by understanding money better. And that's why I'm here, to give you the knowledge and the ideas that you might need to be $790,000 better off. In this first module, we're going to just go through a broad overview of a framework that you can use to better understand money. We don't go into too much details on the individual steps because they're a module just in themselves and they're going to come a bit later. This framework, or you might even call it a philosophy, is to treat your household finances like Tech Mahindra and other successful businesses treat their finances. I believe if you do that, you'll get some amazing financial results. So, if you're going to treat your house like a business, the first thing you're probably going to need is a business plan or a business strategy. So let's start with that. Does anyone know what a SWOT analysis is? A SWOT analysis is where a business or the business leadership team sit down and work out the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats of the business. It was one of the first things I did when I created the business plan for my business, and also when I've been involved in much larger companies creating business plans. The reason why a company goes through this process is it allows them to take a step back and really look at things in a more structured way, rather than just assuming they know what their strengths and weaknesses are, rather than assuming they're self-aware. They go through a process of trying to really analyze where they're at. A household should do the same thing. They should really analyze where they're at, not just assume they know where they're at. So when it comes to household finances, step one is, where are you now? So what do you think common answers to that question might be for a household? Most people probably jump to assets and liabilities. Where am I now involves how much do I own and how much do I owe. That is important, but there's something else that's much more important. Let me ask you a question. Which number do you think the CEO of Tech Mahindra worries about more? The net worth of the company, that is its bank balance, or the profit of the company? Now, I'm not sure, I've never met the CEO, but I would imagine it's probably the profit of the company. And there's a reason for that. Profit is what can drive bank balances up or down. It shows what's going to happen in the future, not what's happened in the past. So for a household, it's absolutely vital that you know your household profit. That you know where you're at now by understanding your household profit. Household profit for an individual or a couple is their income minus their expenses. It's their savings capacity. How much are you earning and how much are you spending? It's absolutely vital you know those two numbers and that you're earning more than you're spending on an ongoing basis. By understanding that, it allows you to make better decisions. Decisions on what you should do with your profit. Can you do something with it that's going to make your profit larger next year? Should you be paying down debt? Should you be putting in super? Should you be saving it? Does it need to be going towards some goals that you've got coming up? The best way to understand your profit is to create a budget. And you'll find that most good companies actually have a budget. I would probably guess that Tech Mahindra have a budget. And there's a good reason why they bother doing that. It's so that they have a projection on what their profit might be and they can make good decisions on where they're going to prioritize their expenses. Now, when I say a budget, I don't mean something that you wrote down 18 months ago that underestimated your expenses and that you haven't looked at since. There's a difference between doing a budget and having a budget lifestyle. And unfortunately, sometimes people get confused and they think budget means that you have to restrict your expenses. That's not necessarily what it's about. It's about understanding what your expenses are and understanding what your income is. It's got to realistically estimate what you earn, what you spend, and what's going to be left so that you can make decisions on what you can do with that profit. There are thousands of apps and spreadsheets that you can do this with. The Australian government have one on their Money Smart website. It's not perfect. It's got some problems about including tax deductible expenses, as well as doing scenarios, but it's a serviceable spreadsheet. I use one that's kind of more custom built that allows me to do tax calculations and do some what if scenarios for my clients. As we go through today, what I'm actually going to do is present a case study so that you can see how this framework can apply to a real person, to get you thinking about how it might apply to you. So the case study I'm going to go through today is a case study called Jeff and Jan. They're in their early 40s. They've got a house worth $600,000 and a mortgage of $280,000. Jeff's a technician, Jan's a part-time teacher. They have 2 kids at school. Importantly, when they sat down to work out step 1, where are they now, they worked out that their expenses were $7,200 less than what they earned. So that was their profit, that was their cash flow surplus. That's the first thing that you need to do, is work out that number. Once you've worked out that number, you can move on to step 2. Step 2 is working out where you want to be, the vision and the specific objectives, your goals. And it's important that you do this, because if you don't know where you want to get to, then it doesn't really matter which direction you take and what you do with your money. So let's start with vision. A vision is very broad, very high level. What I want you to think about here is, what makes you happy? What do you enjoy? What's important to you? Goals are a little bit more specific. What specifically do you want to achieve? An objective is more tactical. It might be paying down the home loan or saving tax. It's a bit of a difference. You don't just save tax for the sake of saving tax. Your objectives allow you to achieve your goals, which allow you to achieve your vision. Goals are probably the most important of those 3. And they're the ones I want you to focus on today. So, in step 2, I want you to use this framework in developing your goals. For a goal to be effective, it's got to have these traits. It's got to be specific. That is, don't just say you want to go on a holiday. Where do you want to go on a holiday? Now, this might seem a little touchy-feely maybe, but it's important. Humans are driven by motivation. If you have a picture in your head of where you want to go on holidays, you'll be motivated to try and achieve that. If you just have a general idea of that you want to take a break, then it's not going to be that motivating when it comes to a point in your life where you have to choose between going to the local Thai restaurant or going to a nice steakhouse, if one is going to allow you to go on a holiday and the other one isn't. The next one is, it needs to be measurable. You need to be able to know when you've achieved it. That is, a goal of being wealthy is not a goal. What are the specific things that you want to achieve that makes your life better? So, putting the kids through private education at a cost of this, going on a holiday here at a cost of this, buying a Nissan Patrol at a cost of this. So they've got to be measurable. Next, they have to be achievable. Now, this often requires some maths. You've got to be able to work out that you know that you can afford it, because if you've done the maths and you go, I know how I'm going to achieve that, and I know exactly what it is, then that can be very motivating. You've just got to follow what you've worked out you need to do to achieve that outcome. And you'll be much less likely to have a blowout on your expenditure, or to spend money on little things that don't really mean a lot to you at the expense of the big things that mean a lot to you. It's got to be relevant. It's got to link to your vision. Is this something that really, truly is important and makes you happy? And it's got to be time bound. When do you want to do it? What's the date that it's going to happen? It's important that you structure your goals in that way to make them a motivating set of things that you're going to achieve. So for Jeff and Jan, they wanted to renovate their house. It was a kitchen. They wanted to put their kids through school. It was going to cost them another $160,000 over the next 16 years. They wanted to upgrade their car. That was going to cost them $20,000. And they wanted to go on a holiday to Thailand for a week and a half, costing $10,000. So what are your goals? Often people's goals aren't too far off that if they're a family and their situation's similar to Jeff and Jan. But they can range dramatically. There can be a boat or more travel or not children's education. Cars might not be important, but the renovations might be more, or upgrading the house, or TVs and electronics might be up there. Now, in terms of Jeff and Jan's objectives, they wanted to pay out the mortgage sooner. They wanted to retain their current lifestyle. They wanted to manage money better. They're all objectives that will allow them to achieve their goals. They also want to retire in 20 to 25 years on $60,000 a year. Now, I put this one at the end. It's a goal, but I put this at the end because I wanted to focus on this one for a little bit. Because most people have never thought about what they want to retire on. And it's important that you have an idea. So these are the numbers that you need for a comfortable retirement according to some research done about what retirees need at the moment. So this might give you an idea on what your goal should be for retirement. It's important that you have that goal, the end game. You know, you could be in retirement for 20 or 30 years. You want to make sure that it is something that you have a quality of life that you're happy with. So to retire, if you're single, you'd need $23,000 for a modest lifestyle, $42,000 for a comfortable lifestyle. If you're a couple, then it's $34,000 for a modest lifestyle, $58,000 for a comfortable lifestyle. So have a think about what that might mean for you. If you want to do a bit more travel, then you might need to increase those figures up a little bit. Now, I also wanted to stress how difficult achieving those outcomes is, particularly if you don't plan for it. Only half of couples will reach a comfortable retirement, but only 15% of couples if they're relying on just their superannuation to get there. Singles, it's even harder because you don't have expenses that you can share. So that highlights the importance of actually taking action and not just thinking, oh, it's all right, I've got money in super that'll tide me over. And let me tell you, the age pension is nowhere near a comfortable lifestyle. It's well below a modest lifestyle. So don't just be relying on that. Okay, step 3. So step 1, you know where you are now. You've worked that out. Step 2, you know what you want to achieve, so you know the end point. Next, you've got to work out what stands in your way. What's between step 1 and step 2? What challenges do you face? Now, sometimes these challenges take two forms. They can be real hurdles, real roadblocks that are going to physically stop you from achieving these goals. And sometimes they're mental roadblocks. So when it comes to mental roadblocks, let's talk about them for a second, because to be honest, they're the most common ones. They're the ones that hurt people the most, are these mental roadblocks. They're not real challenges apart from people have a perception that they are, and that makes them a reality. So common ones are, I'll get it sorted sometime in the future. Now's not the right time to be worrying about my retirement and my goals. I've got kids that I've got to put through school and I've got to pay out a mortgage. I'll just focus on that one thing at a time. Other people think they've just got a lack of knowledge. They're not good with money, and they just don't want to look at it. They want to bury their heads in the sand. Other people think they don't earn enough money, and that's a common one. And it's just not the case. What matters is your profit, not how much you've earned. I've seen people in better financial positions that earn $40,000 a year than doctors who earn $400,000 a year. It's not about how much you earn, it's about what you do with what you can save. Some people think, well, I'm an employee, I can't save tax, I can't really do anything. Other people think that their super will be enough without ever having done any numbers and any maths on it. And other people just think they don't know how. So Jeff and Jan had some of these obstacles, but they also had some legitimate barriers that stood in their way. Those barriers were their mortgage. They had a fairly large debt at about $300,000 that they needed to pay off. They had a small savings capacity, saving $7,000 a year between both of them. They didn't really have enough income to achieve their goals, or enough savings capacity. If you're saving $7,000 a year and you want to put your kids through school and buy a car and do renos, takes quite a lot of years of saving $7,000 a year to do that. They paid a lot of tax, and they couldn't really reduce their lifestyle. They didn't really want to live on less. So once you've worked out where you are now, what you want to achieve and what stands in your way, the final step is determining what your strategy is. Now, it is absolutely vital that you just don't jump to step 4. That you just don't go, oh, there's a strategy, that looks good, maybe I'll do that, without first taking into account step 1, 2, and 3. This is a very common mistake people make. I see it all the time. They come in to have a chat with me and they've implemented a strategy, whether it be buy a rental property, salary sacrifice to super, do some kind of share trading or something like that they're trying to do. And when I drill down into why they've decided to go down that path, the answer is typically an anecdotal story. Well, my neighbour did well out of property, or I just like the idea of it. It's not about how it applies to their situation and how it actually helps them achieve their goals. So I'm not going to go through any specific strategy, because if I do, you've missed the whole point. Because if I said, well, here's a strategy, and then you go and implement it because I've presented a strategy, then you haven't done step 1, 2, and 3 before considering the strategy. So you've got to really go through that process before you start brainstorming, well, what are the options you've got? What can you be doing to achieve these goals? What are the problems? For some people, problems are about saving money. For other people, problems are about investing. For other people, they're about emotional decision making. So there's a whole different range of step 1, 2, and 3 scenarios before you get to step 4. What is your strategy? What I will go through is what most good strategies need to touch on. What do they need to address? Most good strategies need to address these 4 points. They need to address tax. So anything that you do might have a tax implication. They need to address how it affects your ability to pay down debt and the debt itself. They need to address long-term wealth, so investments, and they need to address your ability to save. So how does the strategy you're looking at affect those 4 things? Now, a good strategy will typically, particularly if you don't have much of an ability to save, will typically look something like this. Most people have their money flow into 3 different areas: their tax, their debt, and their living expenses. So what a good strategy is trying to do is change that and improve that. And often it'll improve it by finding a way to pay the debt off faster, finding a way to reduce the amount of tax that needs to be paid so that there's a bigger chunk of the pie left over to save and invest for future goals, for your future needs. And often living expenses is required to stay the same for most people. Some people cut them, some people can increase them, but for most people they'll stay about the same. Now, when it comes to the investment side of the coin, investment is just savings for goals. Your superannuation is savings for goals. Cash at bank is a type of investment. It's short term in nature generally, but it's a type of investment. So when I talk about investment, I'm just talking about how you're saving for goals and what asset class you're putting that in. Are you putting in property, shares, term deposits, bonds, cash? But it's important that you understand that for long-term savings, a small difference in your rate of return can mean a big difference in the end result. This graph goes through somebody who earns 6% on their money versus someone who earns 8% on their money. Let's say you had 100,000 in super, there was nothing additional going in, and you earned 6% a year on super. Your super would grow to $320,000. Not bad, 3 times what it was worth 20 years ago. But if it grows at 8%, it will have an uplift of $145,000 and end up at $460,000. A lot better off. That's compounding over time. So don't ignore your superannuation, particularly as a long-term savings measure, and what that's invested in and what interest rate that's got at, because superannuation is just a tax-effective vehicle to have long-term savings for your retirement. You can choose where it's invested. It can be invested all in cash or all in shares, and the differences in rates of return can be quite significant. So let's see how Jeff and Jan fared. They followed this process. They first looked at where they were now, being able to save about $7,000 a year, having a home loan of about $300,000, a house worth about $600,000, and not a hell of a lot in super. They then had a look at where they wanted to be. They wanted to retire on $60,000 a year. They wanted to do some travel. They wanted to upgrade the car. They wanted to put their kids through private education, and they wanted to do some work on their house. They then explored what stood in their way, both the mental roadblocks as well as roadblocks related to how much interest they pay on the loan, how much tax they pay, how they're managing their money and actually able to save. And then finally they developed a strategy. And the strategy they were able to develop allowed them not only to pay their home loan off 3 years quicker than where they were heading, they were also able to take $200,000 out of the home loan in that time to spend on goals like upgrading or renovating the house, putting the kids through education, upgrading the car, going on holidays. Even with spending that $200,000, they managed to pay the home loan off quicker. They managed to save $58,000 worth of interest back on their loan by paying the debt down quicker. They managed to save $327,000 in tax and eventually retire with an additional $723,000, or retire on about $59,000 or about $60,000 a year versus the $23,000 they were heading towards before they made the changes that they ended up making. So some really powerful results. And they did this by walking through this process and implementing some changes in their lives. So where to from here? So obviously there's more sessions to come if Tech Mahindra decide to roll out the entire program. But the first thing you really need to do is try and get a bit broad understanding of where you are now, what you're trying to achieve, what stands in your way, and what you might do about it. The future sessions will go into things like helping you understand your financial future. So doing a few projections about where you're currently heading. It goes into how to make a budget that actually works, that means you're saving money. It goes into shares versus property versus super. It goes into how to pay your mortgage off quicker. More importantly, or probably of more value to you that you can take advantage of now, is coming in for a one-on-one consultation, or over Skype if you don't live in Brisbane. I'm located in Brisbane, so obviously if you're in Brisbane, I'm happy, and my preference is to meet face to face, but I'm happy to have a phone conversation or a Skype conversation for anyone else here today. It doesn't cost anything. It's really a chance for us to have a look at your current position, have a look at your cash flow, have a look at what stands in your way, and then discuss what options you might consider about different strategies to help you get ahead. As I said, doesn't cost anything. If you'd like to take advantage of that, in the feedback form that I email you, there'll be a little tick box saying that you're interested in that and you'd like to see me about a one-on-one consultation. Leave your phone number and I'll give you a call and we'll line something up. Other than that, I might move over to the Q&A, so I just might switch to the Q&A section here. So give me 2 seconds as I switch to Q&A.